Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This tutorial was inspired by Amy Heidemann of her Umpqua Makery. I'm going to link her socials down below so you could see her original tutorial that she posted for this look on her Instagram. I'm working with a fully prepped and sanded 24-ounce Plump that I got from the Tipsy Magnolia. I will have them linked down below in the description box. And I'm spray painting this with Rustoleum 2x French Lilac spray paint. I want to get a really nice solid coat on this because this color is going to be the backdrop of our whole design. As soon as my cup is dry to the touch, I'm ready to start working on the design. I'm using some really fine line masking tape that I got from Amazon. Again, I will have it linked below. If you guys are ever wondering how to expand the description box, if you just click on the word more below the video, I believe it's the same whether you're on a computer or a cell phone, that will expand a text box where I have all the links and descriptions and discount codes of this video. The tape lines that I'm laying out are kind of going to be the outlines for our jewels and are mimicking the same lines that are on the jewels of this UV DTF element sheet that you can find at FlynnSistersSupplyShop.com. And these are just really basic kind of geometric shapes. The tape right now is simply an outline. We're going to be adding in details later. Once I've outlined all my jewels with the masking tape, I'm going to use Eileen's Tack It glue. I'm going to pour just a little bit into a medicine cup, and you can see I've added just a few drops of water, just enough to water this down, enough to where it's not going to be so thick and clumpy. I'm going to apply this using just a cheap paintbrush. Once I've got an even coat through all of my jewels, I'm going to let this dry. I will know that it's fully dry because it'll be clear, shiny, and sticky to the touch, but won't deposit adhesive onto my fingers when I touch it. Once we're to that point with our adhesive, we could start applying our cellophane. This is just regular opal holographic, I don't know what it's called, kind of cellophane that you can get from the craft store or anywhere really. And I'm going to crinkle it up before I cut it into kind of big enough shapes to cover in the sections of all of our jewels. I'm going to press it down firmly with my fingers. You can also use this like brush tool. I got this from Callan. She gave this to me as a gift. You can find it on her website. It makes it really easy to really burnish in foils and these kinds of cellophanes and stuff. Once I've got it firmly planted onto my tumbler, I'm going to go through with a sharp craft knife and trim away all of the excess cellophane using those tape lines as my guide for my knife. Take your time with this, but that cellophane is easier to cut through than you think. Don't press too hard and accidentally scratch your paint. There's different materials that you could use for this step. You could do glitter and do just like tack it method glitter or laser foils. I personally just like the look of this cellophane the best, and I thought it was pretty easy to do. I'm going around the edge and making sure that I've cut off all the excess really neatly from there. I think it would be wise for you to tape off your bottom for this design and trim off that cellophane before it goes rounded on the edge if you do plan on finishing the bottom of your cup. Just because I think it would be a pain trying to smooth that out. But anyway, once we've got all of our cellophane through all the jewels and everything's been trimmed up nicely, I'm going to start removing the tape, which was a lot harder than I thought it would be because the Tack It glue had dried over it in some spots, making it a little difficult to remove, but I got it off, no problem. Once we were done with that, I went over all of this with just a coat of our Fast Cure epoxy. I've got 30 milliliters that I've already mixed, and that's going to be plenty for this 20-ounce cup. You might need a little more or a little bit less depending on the size of your tumbler. But there is going to be a lot of smoothing out that needs to happen with the cellophane because it's going to be sticking up and lumpy bumpy in places if we didn't smooth it out really well. So we're not going to get it completely smooth on the first coat, especially if some of that cellophane ends up peeling up and poking through the epoxy, which for me happened. I suppose if you wanted to avoid that, you could have sealed your cup with Mod Podge first, or maybe like a quick coat from Counterculture, which is a fabulous product. Something to smooth that down and seal it before the epoxy. I was not patient and didn't want to do that, so I took my chances And now I'm going to end up having to do some sanding, but not a big deal. It was fine. I let this epoxy dry for at least 4 hours before we moved on to the next step. Remember that your dry time may vary based on the type and brand of epoxy that you're using. Also, don't forget to remove your tape from the bottom after you've applied your epoxy and torched it to pop any remaining bubbles. I forgot to remove my tape and ended up having to do it way later, but it was fine because this was just a first coat and it wasn't too thick. Tape came right off. Anyway, now that we've got that on there, I'm ready to start my sanding. So I just got some 80 grit sandpaper that I've wrapped around an old sanding block, and I'm going to sand aggressively all around the cup until I've got this smoothed out. Be very careful though, since we're sanding over the first layer, that we don't sand too far down and damage our paint. I'm also going to go around the rim like I normally do. Around the rim, we want to sand down to expose a fine line of stainless steel. This fine line of stainless steel around the top rim is where our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create the final seal for our tumbler on the outer rim, rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. Especially since we have that cellophane so close around the top rim, and later we'll have some vinyl lines, we really want to make sure that we give a nice solid base for those final coats to seal everything in. Once I've got all my sanding done, I'm going to clean this up with some rubbing alcohol and paper towel. We're going to clear off any remaining debris, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. Next, I'm going to be outlining our jewel shapes with some vinyl lines. I've already cut some vinyl lines earlier for a different project, and I'm actually using the vinyl that was left over in between. If you were to cut these yourself using Cricut Design Space, you could cut your vinyl at 11.5 inches wide by 0.05 inches tall for a similar shape, and then you would just duplicate, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 of them should be enough for this project. And then you're going to just line them out and cut in different lines with your craft knife to mimic the lines of the jewels on the UV DTF element sheet that we're also going to be using on this tumbler. This looks a lot more tedious than it really was. All in all, I think if it were my second time around doing it, it would only take me about 10 or 15 minutes. But since it was my first time, it did take me a little bit longer. The main goal here is to make sure that all the lines are really cleaned up. You don't have any kind of overlapping ends from your vinyl lines, and just get everything nice and straight and clean. Once I got done with that, we're going to start putting on the UV DTF, and so I'm just going to cut out the main focal of this element sheet. Once we have it cut out, I'm just going to position it on my tumbler using a piece of masking tape, and then I'm going to use a ruler to make sure everything's nice and straight. Once I'm sure that this is straight on the cup, I'm going to peel back the carrier sheet and then firmly press down our UV DTF decal, starting from the tape side and moving to the other side very carefully so everything gets pressed down firmly with no wrinkles or cracks. Once that decal is firmly pressed down, I'm going to remove the sticky carrier sheet on the top, and then we're good to go. It's that easy. Now we can start putting on the little jewels around the cup. I just put these on kind of randomly wherever I thought they looked cute. One fun thing about the jewels on this element sheet is they're kind of transparent, which is a lot of fun for this design, so you can see those cellophane jewels underneath kind of poking through. I think it adds a really fun element to this cup. Once I've got all those done, I'm going to go ahead and sign the back, and now we're ready for our final coats of epoxy. Before we apply this final coat, we really want to make sure that all those vinyl lines are pressed down very firmly. If you're worried about your vinyl coming up, you can hit it with like a heat gun just to really activate that adhesive, or you can use like Mod Podge or again Quick Coat from Counterculture, and that's going to really seal all of those down so you don't get any kind of peeling that could sometimes happen. I'm using Artist Cure for my final coat so that my cup stays bright and beautiful for a very long time. And of course, that final coat never really is the final coat. I ended up having to do a second coat after this. I had some spots that came up a bit. I had to sand down a little and coat again, and that happens. But all in all, this was such a simple design, so fun and easy to do. I hope you guys were inspired. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.